down the seduction theory and was not satisfied with the two rather short papers he wrote, one in French, one in German, but as he told Fries, in defiance of his colleagues, and I guess one should not act too often in defiance, as we learned from Dr. Solnit now. One should make wise choices, which Freud did not do. He published a paper in which he boasted in an unusual way, as in no other paper. He uses terms with theories clear like sunlight, self-evident, irrefutable, very, very strong terms. And as you know, his colleagues rejected this lecture. He was very downhearted about it. But now it turned out that he had been right, and he had even gone so far as to say that his discovery amounts to can be compared to the discovery of the Caput Nili, the discovery of the sources of the Nile. That was at the time in the center of public attention and a great accomplishment. So he couldn't have boasted more than he did in that paper. And now if he goes to talks to his colleagues and finds something new, they quite rightly will say, well, once you told us that you saw the source of the Nile and it turned out it was wrong, how do we know that you tell us now the truth? And he really would not have been able to give a good excuse. So that's also one reason why he did not revoke the theory, but only 9 years later, when he thought that most people had forgotten about it. It was true. He did not care anymore about the seduction theory. Now here I used what I call in my paper the unrestricted exegesis. I think that in analysis Freud made it possible to enlarge tremendously the area from which we derive explanatory factors. If you want to explain a cultural element or a passage in a letter that puzzles us, we are entitled to quote mythology, to look at it like as we do in dream interpretations. There is it you, it could be our own intuition, it could be something a patient told us. There is no limit to the breadth of interpretation we are permitted to go. But then I found in one letter passages where I was quite desperate. I thought it's really impossible even to, with unrestricted exegesis, to make sense. I'm referring to a letter Freud wrote in the year 1878 to the Knopfmacher I mentioned. He was at the time working at Stricker's laboratory. He had left Brücker's physiological laboratory. One does not really know why. And he was not very successful with Stricker, and the task Stricker had given him he was not able to solve, and so he left Stricker and went back to Brücke. Now, in that letter to Knopfmacher, he returns money he had borrowed from him. And Knopfmacher did not want that he should repay it quickly. He said, but I have to do it because I know if I keep it I will spend it, and that would be terrible. So you should get it on time, and I enclose my works, my collected works, but not all, because a galley is on the way of reaching me. The two papers he sent was the one he was published as the second, although it was the one he had written first, on an organ, on the lobed organ in the eel, and the other paper was on spinal ganglions of of a low fish, which Brücke had given him to examination, and after a few months, very quickly, the paper was printed by the Academy of Science. Very surprising that he was just a beginner at Brücke, that he could accomplish that in such a short time. But then, after he says that the third paper, the garret of the third paper is coming, he said, and I see a fourth, a fifth, a sixth paper, and I am exclaiming with Macbeth, is there no end? Which is flabbergasting, because the scene in Macbeth, where Macbeth also says a second, a third, only he doesn't say sixth, a seventh, is a very tragic scene. Macbeth, as you know, committed the greatest crimes and loaded his conscience, which I think is the greatest sacrifice a man can make in order to get the kingship, as the three witches made him believe he might accomplish. And in that ghost scene, the future kings of England appear, and Macbeth discovers that they are not his progeny. So all the crimes he committed and all the guilt he loaded himself was in vain. He did not reach his goal. And the question is, why should that young student compare the papers he will write in the future with the English kings which were not Macbeth's progeny? He also quotes something else, which I will read to you later, from Wilhelm Busch, a German satirist, also very pessimistic passage which ends in a catastrophe. What was the similarity between Macbeth and Freud? I discovered one, that Freud might have had the feeling that he is also under the promise of three superior forces, like, or that he is promised to achieve something great by three forces, as Macbeth was promised by the three witches. One was that he was chosen as a Jew, and a Jewish boy who reads the Bible, and Freud read it in very young years, knew that he was chosen by God. But he was also chosen in a more special way by his father, because, and whenever I think about it, I marvel. I don't know whether you are aware, but he had the exact family constellation that his forebear, the biblical Joseph, had. He was the eldest son of the second favorite wife. And I cannot well imagine that when he read the Bible, that did not come to his attention. And he might have identified with the biblical Joseph early, and I think it's surprising to consider that the two most famous dream interpreters has the same family constellation. After all, I don't know how often it happens that a man is the eldest son of the second favorite wife, and in addition, both of them had a father with the name of Jacob. So you can't ask for more to feel predestined to become a great dream interpreter. And the third force under whose protection